In RuneScape 3, a game where the skilling is not very competitive and most skilling items are inexpensive, double XP weekends are usually welcomed by the community as it brings player counts up and makes RuneScape 3 feel alive, alongside the community streams that Jagex does for charity that you can watch while skilling. But in old school, it's almost a complete reversal in sentiment towards the idea of a double XP weekend. And I should mention that there has not been nor are there any plans for a double XP weekend in old school, and that's because of the adverse effects it would have on the game, with many players detesting the idea of it for many reasons. Two of the most prominent being that it would cause the price of skilling items to skyrocket, and it would be unfair to those in the competitive skilling community, as if a competitive player could not attend, they will most likely be surpassed by those that could be on for the majority of the 72 hours. Even those who are not in the competitive skilling community feel that double XP would devalue players' already earned experience by adding another form of bonus experience, which is interesting because this all started from a bonus, not a double, but a bonus experience weekend taking place in 2010 from March 12th to March 15th. Players would begin the weekend by receiving 2.7 times experience, but the multiplier would decrease by 0.2 every 45 minutes the player remained logged in until it reached 1.5 times experience. From there it will go down by 0.1 times experience until, and after a total of 7 hours, would hit 1.1 times experience, where it would remain for the duration of the rest of the weekend. And to give some perspective on the time period, 2010 RuneScape had HD graphics, summoning, and later on dungeoneering, but it never had any form of bonus experience outside of minigames, of course. So this was new for the community, with players prioritizing the most expensive skills to train, and with players buying supplies to train these skills, the demand for these items would rise, with players like myself buying something like 10,000 mahogany planks before the weekend began, using them while having a 2.7 times multiplier, and when hitting the lower XP multiplier, selling the surplus that if sold early on in the weekend would yield an unexpected hefty profit. This no doubt introduced many players who made a surprising profit during the weekend to merchanting, where players would buy items for low and sell for high. And that is the significance of this bonus XP weekend, where before, players were not sure if it was ever going to happen because of the controversies I had previously mentioned. But now that it did happen, that opened up the opportunity for further bonus experience weekends and would leave many players to debate and speculate if or when the next bonus experience would happen. So the first bonus experience weekend would forever change the economy, as it somewhat encouraged players to stockpile items to try to sell or use during the next bonus experience weekend. And of course there were precautions taken to avoid impacts on the economy. For example, gilded altars would not be affected by bonus experience, and summoning only gave experience at a reduced rate. But this was not very effective, as these resources along with the price of herblore supplies would still rise phenomenally, while weapons and armor and other non-skilling related items will crash the weeks prior to the weekend, as players who could not afford these skilling supplies would liquidate their banks to get a few extra levels. This also took place only 6 months after the release of Overload Potions, a potion that combined extreme potions of every combat style into one potion, and being that this potion is untradeable, players would have to get 96 herblore to access it. So already expensive supplies will rise even further, especially from those stockpiling for the potential of the next bonus experience weekend, which would come later the same year, lasting from September 3rd to September 6th, with the only change being that bonus experience would decay at a slower rate. This and the bonus experience weekends that would happen in March and September of 2011 would only solidify the idea that these events would be staying, and while sure they did have great effects like boosting membership, since at this time only members could partake in bonus experience. But the effect it would have on the RuneScape economy would only worsen as they went on, where even those players who were not participating in the bonus experience weekend would usually sell their gear, not for skilling supplies, but to avoid losing bank value due to the massive crash of items these weekends would bring along with it, where it would usually take several weeks to a couple months for these items to rise and stabilize once more before getting hit with another bonus experience weekend. While some blame standard inflation for the crash, many others would pin the blame on the weekends, as it felt like being stuck in a loop of selling and buying your items back for an event that took place only 6 days out of the year.
Scary bonus XP hits RuneScape this weekend, so Behind the Scenes went in search of bonus XP tips from the JMods and spoke to Mod Mark to find out what's new this time around.
Double XP weekend starts this Saturday. It starts at 12 o'clock British Standard Time, so that's the UK time, the time that we use on the forums, and will end at 12 o'clock midday on Monday the 29th of October. So make sure you've got yourself nice and ready for Double XP weekend.
March 16, 2012 marks the last time the bonus experience system would be used, as it would be replaced by the double XP system we all know now, where previously players could only gain a decent amount of experience for 10 hours of this weekend, could now gain double XP for the entirety of the 72 hours. Which will take place on October 27th, right before Halloween, and I know many of you are probably wondering what the competitive skilling community thought of this. After all, one of the biggest reasons many people don't want double experience in old school is because people would feel cheated out of their achievements because they didn't have the same opportunity, or it would devalue difficult to obtain skill capes. But back then, it wasn't so, because 2012 was also the same year the Squeal of Fortune was released, which gave arguably far more bonus experience than all previous bonus experience weekends combined. That, and it somewhat pasted a pay-to-win status to the game, which had most of the focus and frustration of the skilling community. And for that reason, the controversy behind bonus experience weekends would strangely enough not really come from the skilling community, but with players being annoyed by its startling effects to the economy. With the first double XP weekend also not subjecting the summoning skill to reduce experience rates, whereas it was previously handicapped due to the way the skill works, being that players could only train the skill until they run out of charms, which meant that during this weekend players not only needed half the regular amount of supplies to train the skill, but also half the amount of charms as well. So now most players, like myself, would hoard these charms and train summoning only when necessary outside of double XP weekends. In fact, I got 99 summoning during a double XP week, which mostly sums up why people don't like them, as it becomes kinda like a half-off skills week, because why spend a fortune to level your expensive skills passively when you can just wait for the next double XP weekend, especially if you're a casual player. And I know what I'm saying sounds like a speculation or some kind of hasty generalization, but it isn't because I have proof. This graph shows your average weekend of XP gains, with Herblore being on the lower side and summoning being dead last. But come double XP weekend, players gain 154 billion summoning experience and 94 billion Herblore XP. That's 66 times more experience in summoning and 27 times more experience in Herblore than a regular weekend, and that's by far more experience than any other skill trained during this time. It also seems that these are happening more frequently, where there were no double XP weekends in 2013, there were 2 on 2014, 15, and 16, then 3 on both 2017 and 2018. And while bonus XP does have some negative effects, it does have upsides like bringing membership up, and Jagex usually runs charity streams during these weekends when the player count is the highest. And as for the economy, the rising cost of items can have a good impact for newer players who gather resources and can sell them at a higher price. They can also take advantage of the crashing gear and get a more affordable upgrade, so yes, there is some good in double XP weekends. But not in old school. It's actually not much of a surprise that they're so controversial. I also want to take this time to inform newer players about those fake double XP advertisements you might see on Facebook, or those Twitch streams with a couple thousand views asking you to sign up for double XP. Don't. The streams are being view-botted to bring them to the top to mirror official streams and to link to what is advertised to be the official RuneScape website, but it's just another mirror website run by the person trying to steal your password. So anytime you see a link advertising bonus experience in old school and maybe even RS3, just ignore it wherever you see it, because double experience or even bonus experience is not in old school. In fact, double XP will probably never come to old school unless purchasable experience like in a form of microtransaction came before it that would destroy its competitive nature. And that's why it's old school's bane. Where RS3 had lost most of its competitive skillers, not just by the inclusion of microtransactions, but also that several high scores like the 5.4 billion XP cap had been reached long ago by several people, meaning that you can never be number 1 or even number 100 on the highest scores unless another skill is introduced. Where in old school, max capes are hard to come by and the number 1 player is barely about to reach the XP cap. So the competitive nature is still very much present. There have even been jokes about adding a half experience weekend where the focus of it would be to steer players away from skilling to try to enjoy the rest of the game by partaking in PvP or finishing up the quests that they never had time for. That's just a general feeling of old school, and while the competitive skilling community does make up a minority of the player base, most players are still against it, and not because they care about the bonus experience someone else is receiving, but how it would affect the economy and general approach to skilling in RuneScape like it does in RS3. And what I'm trying to get at is, for those supporting double XP weekends, I understand double experience is nice and will make skilling much easier for a few days. Maybe you work 50 hours a week and just want to get a certain skill out of the way, I get that. but the general fear is that it will do the same thing to Old School that does with RS3. Most players want to avoid losing bank value several times a year, so even if you were busy and weren't able to participate in the double XP weekend, you would still be forced to deal with the increased price of skilling items, making it harder and less affordable to skill before that weekend, or wait a while after it ends for the prices to stabilize. It's just not fun to juggle items and cash around in your bank, especially when that wasn't the intent of it. And I'd like to close by saying this. In the end, it just comes down to it not being about double XP, but it being about half-price skilling / chaotic merchanting weekend, as players will most likely only train the expensive skills, which is why Jagex has confirmed that it will not be coming to Old School. This has been Double XP Weekend and its verse effects. Thanks for watching.